This is an immediate release from the LaRouche Political Action Committee. To Mr. Obama, you are complicit in the murders of Ambassador Stevens and the 3 other American diplomatic personnel. Provided with 48 hours' notice, you did nothing. These patriots, who dedicated themselves to the United States, are now victims of your criminal mind. Mr. Obama, you are not now, nor ever were, fit to serve as President of the United States. Had you given the direct order for the murder of these U.S. diplomatic personnel in Libya, there would be no difference. You, Mr. President, are mentally unfit to serve and must step down. You must be impeached now. You willingly failed to prioritize security at the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi, yet were given clear evidence of threats and intelligence warnings. You were given 48 hours' notice and did nothing. Were you waiting for their murders, Mr. President? This is the case. You let the murders happen. You are complicit. You have violated U.S. and international law with the illegal invasion of Libya and the murder of Muammar Gaddafi, and now have their blood on your hands. You are complicit with Prince Bandar, the head of Saudi intelligence and sponsor of the first and second 9/11 attacks. With your actions, you have unleashed a wave of Islamic extremist terror throughout the world. How dare you? Having knowledge of Saudi involvement of 9/11, you provided in the spring of 2009 immunity to the Saudi family. By doing so, you have protected the British Empire and its reign of international terror. You have continued to conceal key evidence in 9/11-1 and are now complicit in 9/11-2. You have issued extrajudicial murders against American citizens and continue to perpetrate weekly murders and executions through decree. Through the Tony Blair Doctrine, you have violated the principle of national sovereignty and have now brought the world to the edge of thermonuclear extinction, with threatened attacks on Syria and Iran, Russia, and China. What kind of son of a bitch are you? You are a traitor and must be held accountable by the U.S. Congress immediately. Mr. President, you are a criminal of the worst kind, comparable only to that royal disease, Queen Elizabeth. If you are not removed now, millions more, possibly billions, will perish. You must be impeached now. Mr. President, you are a killer. Let's look at the facts. On September 14th, the London Independent reported, quote, "The killings of the U.S. ambassador to Libya and 3 of his staff were likely to have been the result of a serious and continuing security breach. According to senior diplomatic sources, the U.S. State Department had credible information 48 hours before mobs charged the consulate in Benghazi and the embassy in Cairo that American missions may be targeted, but no warnings were given for diplomats to go on high alert and lockdown." End quote. The President and Secretary of State, in these circumstances, alone have the power to act, and they did not. From the beginning of your administration, you have protected the British-Saudi global terrorist network. You are now complicit in the second, British-directed, Saudi-sponsored 9/11 attack on the United States. In an interview on September 12th, Michael Hayden, a 4-star Air Force general and former director of the CIA, said, quote, "The UN Security Council resolution on Libya was bait and switch. It was never just humanitarian assistance. It was to overthrow the regime. As for how that affects the Russians, think about Syria. Actions have consequences. These are reasonably predictable consequences. So I do think that someone who set this chain of events in motion bears some measure of responsibility." End quote. So do we. Mr. Obama, you have violated international law and must be tried in a court of law for murder. The defense of national sovereignty, the defense of the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness must now be upheld. Mr. Obama, you must go. former Senator Bob Graham, co-author of the 9/11 Inquiry Report, states in an article released on September 11th, quote, "The passage of time since September 11th, 2001, has not diminished the distrust many of us feel surrounding the official story of how 9/11 happened, and, more specifically, who financed and supported it. After 11 years, the time has come for the families of the victims, the survivors, and all Americans to get the whole story behind 9/11. It is not merely a question of the need to complete the historical record. It is a matter of national security today." A 28-page chapter in its report centered on sources of foreign support for some of the September 11th hijackers while they were in the United States. That chapter remains censored, denied to the American people. Sadly, those 28 pages represent only a fraction of the evidence of Saudi complicity that our government continues to shield from the public under a flawed classification program, which appears to be a part of a systematic effort to protect Saudi Arabia from any real accountability for its actions. So when Secretary of State Hillary Clinton asks,
"How could this happen? How could this happen in a country we helped liberate?"
perhaps you should remind her that in 2009, when the families of the victims of the first 9/11 attacks filed a lawsuit against the Saudi royal family for their role in 9/11, you intervened to ensure that Saudi government officials and members of the royal family enjoyed sovereign immunity and would not be held accountable. Mr. President, you are knowledgeable of these threats and are culpable for malicious negligence and complicity in murder against American citizens. You have earned every hair of your mustache. Worse, you have betrayed our country on behalf of the British Empire. For this, you are a traitor of the most vile kind. Unfortunately, had you not been renominated by the Democratic Party, this would not have happened. Now, the members of the U.S. Congress must hold you accountable in a court of law. They must stop your murders, Mr. President. Our nation and mankind today must be saved. Until this trash is hauled out, our economic crisis, our nation's collapse, will not only continue, it will become magnitudes worse. We are now on borrowed time. Members of Congress, we demand you stay in session and impeach him now.